Yes, Sasdeva sir,
Yes, sir.
you may start.
Okay. A very good evening to all of you. On behalf of Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, I, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva from Indore, invite you all and welcome you all on this 36th Sunday Literary Satsang, which is being organized today. The topic is very interesting and very relevant. It is the choice of right words and key to perfect communication. And today the keynote speaker is Dr. Praveen Joshi, who is a director, Prerna College of Commerce, Nagpur. Dr. Praveen Joshi is a versatile genius, a good writer, a good poet, an academician, a professor, and we often read about his short stories being circulated in WhatsApp group. And the chairperson of today's satsang is Dr. Murli Krishnan, who is Associate Professor of English, MES, Asmebi College, Thrissur, Kerala. And we have the Master of Ceremony today. Master of this particular program is Samarpita Day, who is a research scholar, Department of English, Tripura University, Agartala. So I welcome you all, and let me introduce
Thank
you
you.
to Samarpita.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm going to give a brief introduction of Samarpita. Samarpita Day, who is the Master of Ceremony today, hails from Agartala, Tripura. Her qualifications are she has done her Masters in English Literature. Currently, she is a research scholar in the subject of English, of course, Department of English, Tripura. Earlier, she has worked as a guest faculty of the subject of English in MBB College, Agartala, BBM College, Agartala, Tripura Institute of Technology. Her achievements are that she has qualified in National Eligibility Test, NET, in December 2018. She's a very promising researcher scholar, and so I welcome you all. And about Praveen Joshi, sir, I would like to say that as a good human being, he's a wonderful professor, and as a writer also. Today I was just reading a short story on his shaving cream. I enjoyed his literary humor and the way he has presented the story in carefully chosen words, the right choice of words. Especially, I remember the words like that maid servant resumed her august office. That made me laugh today, that particular key sentence. And there, besides this, there were many other key words. I think we are going to benefit from him today in the use of the right words for communication. Over to Master of Ceremony, Samarpita.
Good evening to all my lovely viewers. My name is Samarpita De. I come from a very small village called Uttar Ramnagar in West Tripura district of Tripura. Currently, I am pursuing PhD in English from Tripura University. Today, the great opportunity to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for Aspel Sunday Satsang has been bestowed upon me. So, I hereby welcome our honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Praveen Joshi sir, our chairperson for today, Dr. Murali Krishnan TR sir, our coordinator for today's event, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva sir, all the respective members of ASPEL, all the research scholars and all other viewers to the 36th Sunday Satsang of ASPEL on the topic Choice of Right Words Key to Perfect Communication. ASPEL, or Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, is a platform that brings together eminent literary personalities from all over the country to share their expertise and knowledge and enlighten our minds with their fruitful talks. It is a society established with a motto facilitate to elevate the taste and bliss in the field of English language and literature. Considering emerging trends in the field, it is the need of the hour to blend the trends and mend the minds. The society believes that one can improve and elevate his or her abilities once opportunities are made available. Potential is always there. The need is to bring it out from the margin to the center. Amidst this pandemic, when everywhere there is panic, ISPEL is helping us by feeding our knowledge hungry minds, by bridging the digital divide, which in turn is assisting to ensure our mental well being and uh, uh, as well as uh, is refueling our literary pursuits. Personally speaking, I was really very nervous when Gansham sir asked me to perform as the master of ceremonies for ISPES event, as I have had very little experience of hosting any event beforehand. Once I served as a moderator for ISPES event, but that was all. That was the only experience that I ever had. So please pardon me if I do make any mistakes. Uh, and to add to this, my nervousness got the better of me when I got acquainted with today's topic, which is choice of right words, key to perfect communication. Ironically, it suited my condition. I mean, choice of right words, isn't that the most important thing for any verbal or written communication? A good speaker is capable of engaging the audience with just her or his choice of right words to fit the situation. The style of expression of any speaker depends upon that very choice. Any effective communication is only possible when the communicator is able to express her or his viewpoints through the words she or he chooses to speak. Without the know-how of appropriate word selection, uh, the speaker might even get misinterpreted by the audience. Okay, let me not bore you all with my dig on the topic and rather invite our keynote speaker who will do more justice to the topic. Uh, I extend a warm welcome to our chief speaker, Dr. Praveen Joshi, sir. He is an MA, MPhil, MEd, LLB, and PhD degree holder. He is currently the director of Prerna College of Commerce, Nagpur. Earlier, he had served as the vice principal and head of the Department of English at DRB Sindhu Mahavidyalaya, Nagpur. Presently, he is also the president of the Forum for Creative Writers in English, a member of Research Publication Committee of Nagpur University, editorial board member of Langit International Research Journal, advisor of Creative Books of New Delhi, and the president of Nagpur Youth Cultural and Social Forum. He had served as an editor for an English textbook, a literary journal named as Dewdrops, and also for Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar 125th birth anniversary souvenir published by Nagpur University. He has authored 3 books and published 60 research papers at both national and international levels. He was honored with Bharat Shiksha Ratna Award, Social Amity Award, and Educational Excellence Award. We are really blessed to have such a learned and renowned personality with us here today. I request Sir Joshi to enlighten us with his sacred thoughts. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me. I thank the organizing team, my younger brother Ghansham, Dr. Ghansham, my friend Dr. Ashok Sajdeva, and all others who are in the organizing committee of this event. It's wonderful to be with all of you, and I heartily congratulate ISPEL for organizing such wonderful events, especially during this pandemic. This organization is keeping a large number of people, scholars, academicians, teachers, busy in a positive sense. And every Sunday is a kind of treat for all of us. Although many times it is not possible for me to join, I do it on and off. But that's a very wonderful effort on the part of this organization, ISPEL, which has taken deep roots in a very short while. Now, friends, my topic today is right choice of the words, which of course we know is the key to perfect communication. See, across the globe, there is a kind of revolution in the field of communication. Scholars, researchers, academicians, linguists, they have been making all possible efforts to see how we improve the quality of our communication, how day after day we can better our communication in every possible way. And the thrust is more on being very positive when we speak to others or when we write to others. There was a time when it was considered that communication means one should convey and the other should understand. That was the basic idea of communication. But today, we don't look at this particular area as only communicating something and understanding something. Today, we are after effective communication, successful communication, impressive communication, attractive communication, and flawless communication, which is full of positivity. When I visited Australia and had been to some universities there, they have communication skills as a separate subject. And one of the professors there, Professor Austin, said that we are focusing more and more on positive kind of communication. We are teaching our students how to avoid negative communication, which will have a kind of negative impact on the audience or on the readers. Our communication should be very positive and it should make a very positive impression on the minds of the readers or the listeners. And how do you communicate? It's only, of course, by choosing right words. Words are very important. Without words, nothing is possible. Words are the basic components of any language. They carry a lot of importance when communicating the right idea to an individual or a group. The choice of word definition can be termed as the words one uses from one's vocabulary when speaking or writing. One could say that words form the core of the concept of communication itself. Many factors could influence one's choice of words. Now, the other day there was some kind of discussion going on in a WhatsApp group that there was a conference on communication skills, and one of the speakers emphasized that fluency comes if we ignore grammar. Grammar is a very rude obstacle in the way to fluency, in the way to achieving fluency. And the appeal he had made was that we should focus more on communication without minding grammar. And this idea was carried on throughout the conference. And it was the conference of the teachers of English. When I read about that conference and the opinions expressed therein, I was taken aback basically what the speaker had, what the keynote speaker had in his mind, I don't know. But he must have spoken in very general terms that in business, in day-to-day life, we can use language the way we want without minding grammar. But friends, it is certainly not for teachers. We are the teachers of English. And if we lose our focus on the grammar, we shall never be able to teach English in the correct manner to our students. We are not there only to teach communication to our students. We are there to teach them the right way to communicating, right communication with the right choice of words, with correct grammar. It is a fallacy to say that grammar is an obstacle in the way to fluency. Certainly not. When we learn English as a second language, initially that may happen, but with the passage of time, when our reading increases, when we keep on practicing the language, we improve grammar also. We can pay attention to grammar also, and we can speak English in the correct manner. So, we being teachers, it's not our duty only to teach language to our teachers, but we have to teach correct language, correct usages of language. So, choosing right words is the most important thing. There are certain things when we communicate with others, certain things which we should remember. Let us choose words that will be commonly understood. We admire Shashi Tharoor and all those who use very histrionic words, bombastic words. It's not necessary in communication, in writing, it's okay. But even in writing also, we should use the words that a common man understands, the reader understands. If some writer says that my novel or my poem sends the people to consult the dictionary every time, I don't think that he or she is a great writer. A great writer would be the one who makes his readers understand everything in a very easy manner. Using easy language, using easy words is not a discreditable thing. In fact, it is more creditable when we read Pandit Nehru, when we read Mahatma Gandhi, when we read other writers like Mulk Raj Anand and R.K. Narayan. We don't find that we have to consult the dictionary. The reading should be a flowing one, without any kind of obstacle. Here or there, one word or two words, it's okay. But reading must be for the sake of joy. We should get pleasure from that. And if every time we have to run to a dictionary, I think it will be a kind of obstacle on way to have pleasure from reading. So let us choose words that will be commonly understood. Let us state our intent with accurate and specific words. We should be careful that we make sure to use strong words. Strong means that would convey the right meaning. Let us give positive words more significance. Let us not use redundants or superfluous words. All this, today I am speaking before the teachers. But I am emphasizing all these things in terms of students. We teachers, when we teach English to our students, we should teach them in such a way that they are aware of what are redundants, what are superfluous words, what are archaic words, so that they learn communication properly. Let us avoid the use of archaic words, but let us not ignore grammar. Grammar is the soul of any language. And if we, as teachers of English, ignore grammar, then our students will never be able to use English in a correct way. Now, there are many words in English. One must develop ability to use right words to the point where it is inculcated as a habit. We have active vocabulary, we have passive vocabulary. Active vocabulary is the one that we understand the words, at the same time we are in the position to use the words when the time demands. So we should develop the ability to use the right words with reference to the particular event or situation. The right word can emphasize the right subject in a person's mind while holding the person's attention. The right words can clear up awkward situations or pauses, and wrong words can cause awkward situations. Using the wrong words can mean the information was misunderstood. We are not properly conveying the information, and there can be some kind of misunderstanding. As we always see in the case of politicians, their tongue slips, and then there is a kind of furor over their words. So using wrong words can mean the information was misunderstood. The wrong words can result in misunderstanding. The right word choice also shows the speaker, the writer, in a more positive light, because the words can make a greater, right words can make a greater impact. Let us always use the words that a majority of the audience will understand and respond to. I remember once upon a time there was a speaker, and he used the word which was not at all common, and the person was from legal fraternity. The one who was speaking was from legal fraternity, and he used the word morgantic. I asked the meaning of the word morgantic to the friends sitting beside me. I asked it to about 10 friends, and nobody was aware. And that was the key word, in fact. When we use the keywords which are not known to the audience, to the readers, or to the listeners, I think they miss a lot of things. So always we should use the words that the majority of the audience will respond to. We should refrain from using words that people have already overused. If we want our communication to be very effective, to be impressive, let us avoid the overused words. While people may think complex words are the best choice, the reality is simple language can have much greater impact. In our childhood, when we used to memorize poems with simple words, even today we remember. Even today, we remember those simple words, and they have had a greater effect on our mind, on our life. So, simple language can have longer and greater effect. One should not generalize too much. Instead, focus on being more specific. Now, when we are there to make our communication very effective, positive, there are certain things which we must avoid. And what are those things which we must avoid? The first thing comes to my mind is cliche. The words which have been overused again and again, that will never put you into the category of a good speaker. So we must, now there are so many cliches that are always used. For example, let's touch base. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I'm like a kid in the candy store. Play your cards right. Read between the lines. These have been used a million of times. Millions of times, in fact. So if we have to be a different speaker, if we have to make our own identity, let us avoid cliches so that we can make more. We can make our conversation, our writings more effective. Besides cliche, we should also avoid jargon. Jargon is the language of a particular profession. There may be certain words, as I have mentioned that word morgantic, it belongs to the legal profession. And others may not be able to understand that. So let us avoid jargon also. We have hundreds of examples like that, like due diligence. Now this due diligence, this phrase, is a business term that refers to the research that should be done before making an important business decision. AWOL, it's a kind of jargon that means absent without leave. This is used in army or in forces that may not be understood by the people who have never heard this military terminology. DEK, D-E-K. This is the word that belongs to the field of journalism. It is used for subheading, usually 1 or 2 sentences long, and that provides a brief summary of the article that follows. It's called DEK. But a common person may not be able to understand what DEK means. So there are a number of words. Then from medical profession, there is a word called stat. This term is usually used in medical profession, which means immediately. And we will not be able to understand that. What I mean, common person will not be able to understand that. A very popular word which is used, that is magic bullet. This magic bullet, this is a term for a simple solution that solves a complex problem. So this belongs to a business world, which common man will not be able to understand. So let us avoid cliches That is why jargon, unless we are speaking to the people of that particular profession. At the same time, what brings down the quality of a speech or communication, that is slang. Many of us do not take care while speaking and they use slang words. Slang, of course, all of us know very well. It's a type of language consisting of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal, are more common in speech than in writing, and are typically restricted to a particular context or group of people. For certain examples, this low-key affair and on point and lead, LIT lead, coin, dying, epic. Epic is a very important word in literature. But nowadays, this epic word is used for anything that is enjoyable. For a long time, we had an epic night, means we had a very enjoyable long night. We had an epic party. So it's a kind of slang. Now it has come to be recognized as a slang. In this sense, it is never used in literature. So we should avoid using cliches, jargon, then slang. We should also avoid doublespeak. If we wish to be a genuine communicator, an effective communicator, a respectable communicator, a respectable speaker, we should not use doublespeak. In personal conversation, it's okay. In friendly conversations, in very informal gatherings, it's okay. Doublespeak is language that aims at deliberately making the things obscure. That deliberately obscures, disguises, distorts, or even says the meaning of words. I mean, what is said apparently does not mean the same. It means something else. It is primarily meant to make the truth sound more palatable. For example, alternative facts. It's a kind of alternative facts instead of lies or misinformation. Let us not use alternative, the words like the phrases like alternative facts whenever we want to utter the word lies or misinformation. Let us be direct. Let us be clear. Many may not be able to understand what exactly you are aiming at. Whenever we want to say very poor quality, some of us will say it was a bit shaky. Instead of saying very poor quality, some of us may prefer to saying a bit shaky. Ill-advised instead of terrible idea. He is a terrible driver. Instead of saying this, if we use doublespeak saying he is not the best driver, that will not be appreciated. That will not be expected from a good speaker. Police people always keep on saying person of interest. Person of interest means a suspect in a crime. So instead of using person of interest, let's use the direct word, direct phrase, that is suspect in a crime. So it's like that doublespeak must be avoided, and at the same time we should avoid newspeak. Most of the teachers here must have read George Orwell's 1984 novel. It was published in 1949, and that novel was banned. That novel was banned simply because the language was almost all newspeak. What is this newspeak? This newspeak is the language devised by totalitarian government of Oceania to replace English, which is called Old Speak. Newspeak was designed to shrink vocabularies and eliminate subtleties. So, newspeak even cannot be appreciated. As far as this newspeak part is concerned, they would use very un-English or not well-established words or phrases. For example, they would use uncold, the word uncold. Instead of warm, we say today the atmosphere is quite warm, and they would say it is uncold. Whereas uncold is not an English word. And instead of bad, they would use the word ungood. To make it good, they would use D-bad. Now, D-bad is not an English expression. So, this newspeak consists of the A vocabulary, the B vocabulary, and the C vocabulary. The A vocabulary consists of words needed for everyday life and words that already exist but have been stripped of all shades of meaning. So let us avoid this newspeak language also. Nowadays, there is a revolution across the world as far as communication is concerned, as already I have said. And now the focus is on bias-free language. Our language should not be gender biased, ethnic or religion, ethnic bias or religion-wise biased. We must speak bias-free language. And especially in America, it is taught to the students how to use a bias-free language. Let us be clear and direct in meaning. Let us not indulge in unnecessarily drawing attention to details about race, age, country of origin, disability, and gender. Whenever we speak to anybody in a kind of formal communication. Now, sometimes we make a racial remark. If it is necessary, it's okay. If it is something creditable, it's okay to mention a particular race or religion. But if it is not absolutely necessary, but if what we speak comes directly, just if that rises from our bias, I think it would be a good idea to avoid that. Now, 2-3 examples I will mention. Take this example. Franklin is the new African American accountant. Franklin is the new African American accountant. Now here, this racial phrase African American is absolutely unnecessary. That shows our bias. We are unnecessarily mentioning a particular race or country. We can just simply say Franklin is the new accountant. For someone, second example I am citing, for someone nearing retirement, she caught on to that new software quickly. There is some unnecessary part. People don't like the retirement. If one is on the verge of retirement and if it is mentioned, it does not like it. Therefore, the phrase has come into existence, retired but not tired, like that. That is to please the person who is on the verge of retirement. So for someone nearing retirement, she caught on to that new software quickly. Instead, we can say she caught on to that new software quickly. For someone nearing retirement, that is absolutely unnecessary, and that does not add to the beauty of the conversation, beauty of the communication. What it does is it can cause a kind of hurt. So let us avoid such expressions. Abdul has some of the highest call center ratings, even though his Saudi accent is strong. This Saudi accent is absolutely unnecessary. We can just say Abdul has some of the highest call center ratings. Bias-free communication, bias-free speaking or writing. There can be hundreds of examples like this. We should avoid gender bias. In fact, we people have lived in patriarchy, and most of the words, most of the phrases focus on male only. In earlier days, everybody must do his job. His used to be used. Nowadays, we can do everybody must do either their job or everybody must do his or her job. That will be bias-free. Writing in a non-sexist way requires the ability to recognize sexism in the first place. The next hurdle is to figure out a way to eliminate any inherent sexism without disrupting the flow of our communication or speech. The first way to avoid gender bias is your writing. Let us use gender neutral words when referring individuals in various positions. Now, the example like this: did the cleaning woman bring new trash bag? Instead of the cleaning woman, we can always say, did the cleaner bring new trash bags? Instead of cleaning woman, we can use the word cleaner. Do we have enough manpower? See, this is the word that has come from patriarchy. Manpower. As if women are powerless. That will be gender bias attitude. Do we have enough manpower to finish this project? Although in that project, many women must be involved. But the focus transfers from, the focus transfers on men only. So instead of that, we can always say, suppose the sentence is like this: do we have enough manpower to finish this project? We can always say in a better manner, do we have enough workforce? Instead of manpower, we can use the word workforce. See what kind of revolution is going on across the world. How we can use our communication, how we can use words or phrases which are not gender biased. Now, there are certain replacements, substitutes. Instead of saying businessman or businesswoman, we use the term like business people, business world, business executive. Now the word chairman has almost been out. And instead of chairman or chairwoman, we say chairperson. Earlier, even today we use common man. So now we can use an average person in place of common man. A common person. Salesman, saleswoman, we can use salesperson. Like that. So let us use gender biased. Let's avoid gender bias attitude and let us use the words which are not gender biased. At the same time, we should avoid race and ethnicity biased words. When speaking about a racial or ethnic group, deciding which term to use can be a tricky subject because the ascribed meaning to a particular term and labels can frequently change. So let us choose the words very carefully. At the same time, now there is a new trend to avoid disability bias. Remember those days when we used to have the word like physically handicapped, blind. Nowadays, physically handicapped word is not used anywhere because we nowadays call them physically challenged or differently abled instead of physically handicapped. Instead of saying blind, nowadays we say visually impaired. And differently abled. They are not disabled, they are differently abled. So what we can do is, instead of saying the disabled, we can say the people with disabilities. The schizophrenic, instead of saying the schizophrenic, we can say the person diagnosed with schizophrenia. AIDS victim, in a respectful manner, we can say a person with AIDS. This is going on. Nowadays, New York Times and Moscow Times and many dailies, they use such phrases. Instead of saying a person suffering from epilepsy, we can always refer to that person as a person with epilepsy. He is a person with migraine. Instead of calling him a migrainic patient. So, disability bias has also to be avoided. The most important part is that of redundancy, using superfluous words. And it has become very common because we do not use our words very consciously. And sometimes inadvertently it happens. Unnoticingly it happens because we are not always on guard. Writing concisely also involves avoiding redundancies or superfluous words. Redundancy, when you use redundancy, means using more words than necessary to express something. We have, hundreds of examples. When I read articles and write-ups in our groups, I keep on noticing how some of the teachers of the younger generation who don't take care about superfluous words or redundancies use these words very freely without minding whether it is superfluous or not. We have around 50-60 groups of our teachers of English, and some people do write. Some people write very well. I read very carefully, but I find that some of us are not careful about superfluous words, about redundant words. Past experience. We should understand that experience will always be something from past. So there is no need for us to say past experience. Merge together. Merge itself contains the meaning of the word together. So merge together, together becomes superfluous. Small in size. This is a packet which is small in size. Small in size, large in size, big in size. That in size becomes redundant. Hundreds of examples can be given. I remember somebody saying, he shouted loudly. If shouted is there, what is the need of loudly? The word shouted itself contains the meaning of loudly. Future planning. This future is involved in planning. So future planning becomes, the word future becomes redundant there. Absolutely not necessary. It's my planning. So there can be many examples like this. He raced hurriedly, whispered softly, deliberated thoughtfully. If deliberated thoughtfully is already there, I have finished my job completely. If it is finished, completion is of course there, so that adverb completely becomes redundant. So we must avoid the redundant or superfluous word if we want to communicate effectively. Brevity is the quality of good communication. And if we speak of brevity, the redundant words or superfluous words have no place in brevity. One more point I would like to stress is that many of our young teachers fail to explain to their students that there are certain verbs which are not used in continuous tenses. Many of the young teachers who have recently joined, who have not studied grammar properly, or who have not been taught grammar properly at their school level, or who have not taken interest in learning grammar, are noticed saying, I am forgetting it. Now I am forgetting it. Yes, I am understanding. Yes, I am feeling very good. I am smelling the floor. Yeah, it is sounding good. I am agreeing with you. I am promising you. I am believing this. I am knowing this. The words which express our feelings like hate, like, love. I mean, there was one advertisement, I am loving it. That for sake of advertisement. They also know that grammatically I am loving it is not a correct sentence because love is a static verb. So it cannot be used in continuous tense, but that's advertisement. But then that cannot be a good example for us to follow it. So the words that express feelings, senses, communication like agree, deny, disagree, mean, promise, satisfy, surprise, all such words, verbs of perceptions cannot be used in continuous tenses. And while communicating with others, we must remember, we must avoid using such verbs in continuous tenses. The other day I heard one saying, I am belonging to Nagpur. Now, first the phrase belong to is wrongly used there, and then that too in continuous tense, I am belonging to Nagpur. We teachers, if we do not make our students aware of such things, who else will do? I think it is our responsibility to make our teachers, to make our students aware of all such important things when we teach them communication skills. We teach them English, but we must teach them correct English. And if we keep on ignoring such areas, such important areas, our students will always be making mistakes, and when they become teacher, they will be following the same thing. So certain verbs which cannot be used in continuous tenses, we must avoid using them in continuous tenses. There is one very important aspect nowadays, that is positive communication. We should have positive phrasing, positive language. Let us avoid negative language. Now, I mean, this is not a matter of training that only you think and you will be able to understand. How we can make our communication a positive one, how you can use positive phrases, positive sentences, positive language. Some azan is going on here, and I think that should not disturb us. Now, when we say positive phrasing, some of the examples will make it clear what exactly I want to say. Suppose somebody says the damage won't be fixed for a week. Damage won't be fixed for a week. Instead of that, we can say, you can pick up your car next week. Instead of saying the damage won't be fixed for a week, let's say, I mean, the person should say, you can pick your car next week. The difference, how we can avoid negatives. If we say the enclosed statement is wrong, that will have some negative effect. So let's say, please recheck the enclosed statement. Please recheck the enclosed statement. If somebody says, I think it's a bad idea, instead we can say, I don't think that's such a good idea. Instead of having the negative word bad, we can use the word good. It's too expensive for us. Instead of that, we can say, it's not as reasonable as we think. Or as we had hoped. So, I mean, more and more positive thought on this will improve our communication and will make it more positive. I know time limitations are there. Suppose somebody says this will cause a problem for us. Instead of that, we can say that may cause a slight problem for us. The word slight would reduce, minimize the intensity of the negative effect. In this way, many examples can be quoted. One more thing I would like to highlight here or bring to your notice is that we must explain to our students to choose the right word. I mean, meaning wise. Right words for right communication. Many of us have been taught, or many of us have not been careful when we take certain words as synonyms. We have never tried to go deeper into the meaning of those words and their usages. most of the people go by dictionary meanings. In dictionary, large means big, big means large. But are they really synonyms? If I say a person of big heart and a person of large heart, you can very well understand the difference between these two. Gift and present, they are taken as synonyms. Isn't there any difference as far as their usage is concerned? Have we really taught our students the difference between gift and present? They are taken as synonyms. The Oxford Dictionary of say 1950s or 60s, not a new version, makes a very good difference between gift and present. A gift tends to be much more valuable than a present, and it usually passes from the rich to the poor, from the high to the low, from an authority to the employee, from parents to children, from teachers to their students, from superiors to their subordinates. Whereas the present, on the other hand, passes between equals or from the subordinates to the superior. We have never peeped into this particular part of words, and we freely use gift and present as synonyms. This might encourage certain teachers now to study this area more particularly at deeper levels. Fact and truth. What a big difference is there between these two words, fact and truth. But our students or the learners take fact and truth as synonyms. A fact is something that's indisputable, based on empirical research and quantifiable measures. Facts go beyond theories. They are proven things through calculation and experience, or they are something that definitely occurred in the past. Whereas truth is entirely different from fact. It may include fact, but it can also include beliefs. In a particular race, I don't want to name it, they say mother is the fact and father is the truth. Now we can very well understand the difference between the fact and the truth. They are not synonyms and they should not be taken as synonyms. Have we really taught our students to bring out the difference between correct and right? For many of us, correct means right and right means this answer is correct. Yes. This answer is right. Yes. Isn't there any difference when you say this answer is correct and when this answer is right? just because they appear as synonyms in dictionary, are they really synonyms? Correct is defined as conforming to or agreeing with fact, logic, or known truth. Right is defined as being in accordance with what is just, good, or proper. The other day I visited a college and there was a notice on the notice board, and the notice was probably dictated by the principal, and it was written there from the principal side, the student's problem will be addressed. That just made me focus on whether really he wants to say that the principal, whether the principal wants to say that the problem will be addressed or the problem will be redressed. If a teacher says, yes, your problem will be addressed, it will bring to the attention, to the notice of the principal, it's okay. But when it comes from the principal side, who is the authority to solve the problem, in my humble opinion, I think it should be redressed. Because there is a difference between to address and to redress. To address is bringing the problem to the attention of the authorities, and redress means solving the problem. Before and ago are always taken as synonyms. Entrepreneur and businessman, they are considered synonyms. Whereas there is a vast difference between entrepreneur and businessman. A businessman makes his place in the market with his efforts and dedication, whereas an entrepreneur has a vision, he has a mission. An entrepreneur creates the market for his own business. The businessman is a market player, while an entrepreneur is a market leader. He is the first to start such enterprise. He's an enterprising person. He's innovative. He's visionary. He applies new ideas for the growth of the business. He will invent something. He has innovative mind. Anybody can be a businessman, but not that everybody can be an entrepreneur. Many times I found the word like touching and touchy being used as synonyms, whereas they are not. I always keep on wondering why it is always said I express my heartfelt thanks instead of hearty thanks. Dictionary meaning is okay. Hearty means heartfelt. But you can have heartfelt sympathies, heartfelt condolences. But how can I express heartfelt thanks? It should always be hearty thanks. But many of the teachers of English use this phrase, heartfelt thanks. Heartfelt means something you have very strongly felt as a kind of sorrow or sadness. If I mean, this is accepted by us, the community of teachers. It's really unfortunate. The same way, grateful and thankful, these two are used as synonyms. I think it's high time it's high time we brought to our notice what the difference between grateful and thankful. The word grateful as showing, the word grateful means showing an appreciation of kindness. This is where the difference lies. Being thankful is a feeling and being grateful is an action. Gratitude is more than just the feeling of thankfulness. Being grateful is about appreciating what one has as opposed to what one wants. Being thankful or thanking someone often implies you are acknowledging your thanks for something that someone has given you or done for you. These are, commonly used words which are used as synonyms. I think it's our duty to provide insight to our students in such words. There are hundreds of pairs like that, and that's not possible. Suitable and appropriate, institute and institution, and distinguish and differentiate, especially and specially. Especially and specially, there's a difference between these two, but they are always used as synonyms. Special is something against general, and especially is something against ordinary. Every day, most of our students use the word every day, everywhere, as every day, every and day together. It's our duty to bring it to their notice that every day written separately is an adverb of time, and every day written together is an adjective. I go there every day, and it is an everyday matter. In the end and at the end, for some of us it's the same thing, whereas at the end refers to a place and in the end refers to time. Soon and quickly. Quickly refers to action, soon refers to time. So there are many things like that. I think this topic was not exactly about teachers. What is my appeal to all of you is that let us teach effective communication to our students, and we should take into consideration all these aspects today I have spoken on. But these are not the only things. There are so many other things which we ought to be very careful about. I have tried to do justice in limited time as far as my topic is concerned. In fact, these are the areas of my concern which I have put forth before you. Many scholars are here, many researchers are here, many academicians and many eminent teachers are here. You know it very well. But my appeal to you is that let us teach these things to our students so that the next generation of teachers can communicate effectively and can teach effective communication to their students. Let us be the maker of the generations, not the spoiler of generations. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And once again, I thank all of you for inviting me and for patiently listening to me. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Over to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for allowing us to be the witness of such a charismatic demonstration. I mean, you just made the whole process of communication seem so fun and lucid. Only if we keep certain things in mind, like putting proper emphasis on grammar, avoiding cliches, avoiding jargons, avoiding words and phrases that are particular to certain professions and certain fields, avoiding redundancy, avoiding biasness. It was such a fruitful experience for me, and I'm sure it was such a fruitful experience for all of us. Okay, now it's time for us. It's time for me to take the questions, and before that, I would like to present one of my own. Do I have your permission, sir? uh, I just want to know that there are certain people who are introverts, who uh, uh, who have a problem in speaking, like problem in communicating. Uh, what can you suggest for such type of persons, like who want to enhance their communication skills?
See, the answer to this question is very simple. Practice, practice, and practice. Read, read, and read. It's only practice that will make you perfect. And whenever we read, let us read with purpose, that I have to learn something from it. If with that intention, with that purpose, we read from the viewpoint of learning, I think this can be easily understood. Then automatically it comes to you. Reading is must for improvement.
Yes, sir, I definitely agree with you. Now, I would like to request our viewers to present their queries to Sir Joshi. Are there any questions?
Samarpita, some of the
Yes.
questions are there in the chat box.
Yes, yes,
Kindly
sir,
take
yes,
them.
sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Okay. There are some questions that has been presented through the chats. There is a question from Madam Veena Ravindra, that is, sir, how could we make rural students use right words as they fancy talking English mixed with their colloquial language?
Pardon?
Uh, how could we make rural students use right words as they fancy talking English mixed with their colloquial language?
See, it all depends on the efforts of the teachers. If the teacher considers himself or herself that he or she or any teacher should teach only during the class, that will not help. A teacher has to go beyond the class, and special sessions, special efforts are required. I would like to cite my own example. We have certain rural students, and in the very beginning of the academic year, we conduct, because ours is an English medium college, and students come from vernacular medium or Hindi medium. So what we do, we sort them out properly, and then those who come from Hindi, Marathi, or any other medium, we have a course for them for 2 months, and that they have to attain. So in 2 months, we can give them a lot. We can give them a lot of practice. And then there is a test for them. So I think just beyond classroom teaching, you have to go, you have to make extra efforts, special efforts, taking into consideration their problems, focusing on their problems. Only that can help us. Otherwise, the students on their own will not take initiative. Let us encourage them to learn English properly. And my experience is that we get a very good response. I have seen the students who, when they join in the first year, are not in the position to speak in the proper manner. But when they reach final, they become fluent speakers. Because the course that we take for 2 months, now this year we are going to make it for 3 months, it helped them a lot. So only classroom teaching will not help. Let us go beyond the classroom and do something for the students so that they feel more interested in learning language.
Sir, we have another question. Is not that the knowledge of collocation is necessary for choosing the right word? Throw some light on it.
Pardon? Knowledge of?
Collocation.
Knowledge of?
Collocation.
Okay. See, if we want to speak any language effectively, we must be acquainted with all the aspects of language, whatever it may be, whichever aspect it may be. Unless we teachers are aware of all these aspects, will not be able to guide our students properly. So knowledge of every aspect is necessary.
Okay, there is another one.
Sir, there is a question from Dr. Anupama Ohra.
Yeah.
She asks, my question is, how do you look at the role of translation in communication and the accent, as source language learners are often confused between the two, British and the American?
Role of translation.
Yes, sir.
I would like to say translation plays a very important role in language learning. But then that would only help the students understanding things. As far as pronunciation part is concerned, expression part is concerned, it will depend on teachers only how much practice they give. Initially, there was a very popular method, grammar translation method, in which there was one particular series. I don't remember the name of that particular writer, but there was a series. You translate those 12 books and you'd be able to understand language properly. But that would always ignore the spoken part, the expression part. Understanding comprehension part would certainly be developing. But as far as expression part is concerned, it depends on the teacher or the surrounding. If the students take interest in learning, they can listen to TV news, they can hear experts' conversations. Today we have Google with us. Today we have hundreds of programs available on YouTube. So through translation, they can learn, but they can improve only through practice of pronunciations. Translation would help them learning new words. Translation would help them learning synonyms. Translation would also help them learning grammar. But expression part, of course, that would come only through practice.
Yes, Samarpita, you can call the chairperson. Yes, Samarpita.
Sir?
Are you there, Samarpita?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Just got muted.
Yeah.
There is another question. To avoid redundancy, how a person can embellish their language, or embellishments are not necessary for effective communication.
Embellishment does not have anything to do with redundancy or superfluous words. Embellishment is something different. That you beautify the language. Redundancy will mar the beauty of language, will spoil the beauty of language. So you can speak embellished language also, you can write embellished language, and at the same time you can avoid redundant words or superfluous words. Embellishment does not mean we have more and more words. We have some unnecessary words. That will be again the principle of brevity. If we read Charles Lamb, if we read Bacon, see, reading Charles Lamb is pleasure. Why? There is brevity. In Bacon, we have brevity, right? You read Hazlitt and you get pleasure. Why? Because brevity is there. These,
Hello?
the language that has been used by Charles Lamb or
Sir?
Bacon or Hazlitt, that is a kind of embellished language. That's beautiful language that captivates you. But that language does not have redundancies or superfluous words. Brevity is there. Yes, please.
Okay. I think there are no more questions. Thank you, sir. Thank you for such an amazing lecture. I'm sure all of us have learned a lot from this lecture. Okay, now moving forward. I just want to express that I'm really indebted to Gansham sir for lending me this platform, as I'm privileged to introduce another prolific personality, our chairperson for today, Dr. Murali Krishnan T.R. sir. He is an associate professor and head of the Department of English in MES Asmabi College, Kadungallur. He is an MA, MPhil, and a PhD degree holder. He is a member of the editorial or reviewer panel in 4 national and international journals. He is also a member of the Board of Studies in MG University and Board of Studies in Calicut University. He has authored 2 books, namely an introductory textbook of linguistics for English learners, a book for the uninitiated, and Discourse in Applied Linguistics and English Language Teaching. He is the recipient of ELT Research Partnership India Award 2014 to 15, which was granted by the British Council in 2014. He completed a minor research project financed by the UGC titled Narratives in Indian Women, foregrounding the flustered and flamboyant female in 2011. I would like to request Sir Murali Krishnan to enlighten us with his viewpoints. Sir, please.
I hope that I'm audible there, and I can.
Yes, sir,
I think that yeah. So thank you very much, Dr. Joshi, Praveen Joshi, for giving us such a wonderful lecture. I'm really, I should say, happy to follow your arguments, and that too, those were presented with a great amount of logic. I don't know whether I can fully follow the argument as such, even though whether it supports the teachers in the forum who were listening to you. The reason is we have a cultural mix in our college as well as in various institutions, where we have students who don't have much of an exposure reading English literature as such. Maybe they must have read local or what we call as vernacular literature, and some of them must have had the opportunity to read classic work, or maybe some of them must have got familiarity with entertainment literature like Wimpy Kid and things like that. So it's a mix actually. And as far as I know, you were addressing us in the sense that what we are supposed to do when we go to the classroom, and I felt that I'm like going back to my days where I was attending something like a refresher program. Thank you, sir. That is a very important thing, because it's a necessity that we need to brush up our basics every time. But your points are quite valid, and I think it is a matter of quite, I should say, um, a kind of a relevant discussion for us. The reason is, say, when we teach students, especially in group task, especially in terms of communication, many a times we forget that we need to teach them the right vocabulary or the right words. And I think listening to you, we were also like in a way following you in the same way, in the sense that we were also in a way adding examples. You were referring to a few, and out of enthusiasm we were also doing that. So I'm happy to admit that I was also doing like that when I wrote the lectures that you have just provided. When I wrote, I also wrote my own examples. The reason is very simple, because it is something that is necessary. That's what I said. Many of your arguments are quite valid, and one or two interesting incidents I would like to refer to. One is, I was listening to a lecture on postmodern theory, or I should say critical theory for that matter. And the lecturer, the presenter there, or the resource person there, went on telling us jouissance. And we didn't know what this man was talking about. And then he went on to refer to Lacan. He referred already to um Freud, for example, critical theory, of course, psychology and psychoanalysis. And intermittently this word came out, like jouissance. Now we didn't know what this word is, as you are referring to a particular word related to legal discourse. And maybe after the lecture, in the hall, we went around asking for people what exactly that word he was referring to. And interestingly, nobody wrote it right. And then luckily we had this, like, we opened our smartphones, and then we found that it is a word in French. It is, the spelling is Jouissance. So that is what the word is. But this man never explained that this has something to do with a pleasure, an enjoyment, etc. But he went on repeating the same word intermittently. So I think the point that you made is very interesting. Like, this actually correlated to my feeling that I had, even though I was a participant when the resource person spoke. This came to my mind. And in the same time, what I would like to add to what you said, I'm not going for a difference of opinion. I would like to say that there is something that I would like to add. For example, there is this trend coming up. For example, trends related to social media, trends related to new words which are emerging from all faces, like all sorts of life. For example, in newspapers. Of course, you are referring to jargons and all, but maybe if you talk to younger generations who are around 18 or 20, they will provide you with words which you have never even thought of, and they may not have gone into the dictionary as such. Like, for example, a word like unfriend, like, of course now it has become popular, but when I heard it during 2010 or 2012, as you said, like adding de for a negative, or adding un for like that. So this kind of new coinages are coming every time. And we find that, for example, somebody explained to us, like, it's something like a Facebook minute. So somebody is spending a lot of time. And there is an interesting cartoon strip, one a conversation between father and mother, and the father asks his wife, of course, like, why is our son so like sad? And she said, he's having a postmortem depression. Postmortem depression means he's not getting connectivity. That's all, very simple. But that is all new things emerging from side by side. So the influence of media, as a teacher, we need to get connected with what is happening to our younger generations, and we have to learn them also to make ourselves updated, because our examples are classical ones. Classical in the sense, they have been taken as a standard one, and those have been like passed on from one generation to another. Fine, we don't debate on that. But at the same time, we need to get connected with the younger, because they have brilliant ideas, innovative ideas, and we need to have what we call as an understanding of what is happening around. And so another interesting thing which I have found in your lecture is the concept of loaded words. For example, the reference to the bias, which is already there, and I'm sure many people who are participants there must have thought about that, especially the gender bias, which is rather quite damaging among discourses around, especially in media, especially in, say, for example, recently, I mean, media reports, they don't talk about the activity, the who did that and who received it. Maybe they must have reported about who received it. Now, for example, a few days back, one of Keralite, Soumya, she died in a rocket attack from, say, she was working in Israel. So next day in the newspaper, it was reported like this: she died in a rocket attack. So when this was reported, naturally, one of my students asked, like, who actually blast off, like who actually used that rocket to target this particular hospital. So that is not being reported. It is only like a biased kind of reporting. So even news media, they too have this kind of a play in reporting things. And I think we need to open up all that, because such critical analysis is also required in classrooms to make it more efficient. And again, the positive idea of communication, what we call as the positive word to be used. And one thing that I have found, even among my friends, or maybe among like people who are around, say there is this common expression called "you are wrong." But we all know we have to change it, like your idea needs some improvement. That is a fundamental message. But when someone look at you, like looking into your eyes and say that you are wrong, you would say that, sorry, I beg to differ, I am so and so, because I am not wrong. In the sense, there is nothing like right and wrong, but there is this like idea, this sensitivity part there to make it more I should say it's more exhaustive. Like you have to discuss one more about, and like in the classroom, to more about such issues which are going on, especially in group discussion. This is a very vital point when people exchange arguments. So and again, there is no doubt your point related to synonyms, they are all very important. I think going by the entire like the gamut of it's a I know you are actually dealing with a big area which cannot be consolidated or encapsulated in a matter of 1 hour 15 minutes. I know that, and there are restrictions related to time. But I think today's this 36th satsang, the Sunday satsang, I should say was really profitable, because it's actually a way of rekindling those memories, like what we have learned, what we were using, and the sense it's actually a brushing up of what all things that we need to take care of, even in a minor, in a small conversation with people. I would say to my students, and I would suggest, or to the young friends who are participants there, I would certainly suggest that the most important thing is to keep talking, and that is the only way to overcome that. As you said, practice. And there is, I think, many of the old generation people know the book called Keep Talking. The title itself is like, it is written by Frederick Klippel, for example. Frederick Klippel's book, wonderful book. It's a communicative fluency activity for language kind of resource book. So Frederick Klippel, and I think you can start from there. You can engage people doing something. There is no point in teacher talking and students listening. It is only one of the LSRW activity. Let them do that. Let them listen, and then they speak, they write, and then they get involved in the activity. So that is the only way out regarding this. That is how, and in this process, as you said, we have to be careful regarding the right word in the right place. And if at all, if there is a problem, and I'll give you one example before I close, like the use of the word right. So I used to say this in this class, like she has every right. Look at the word right in these sentences. She has every right to cancel the ticket, right? She did not get the right answer right. Yes, fine. When you reach the library, take a right turn. Okay, right. I was standing right next to her when she fainted. Yes, right. Excuse me for a moment, I'll be right back. So one word, one just word right can have different dimensions and different levels of meaning. So such a way, you can bring out the beauty of language, make them involved in the activity so that, or part of a role play by which I am sure at the pan-Indian level itself, we can improve our skills or the students' skills in communication. So I'm so happy to listen to you, sir. It's a matter of great privilege. And before I finish, I would say hearty thanks, not heartfelt thanks. So thank you. And over to you, Samarpita. Samarpita, I would like to say that, just a minute, Samarpita, I heard you saying you were nervous. Don't worry.
Yes.
Almost 30 years back or 32 years back, when I was a student, I was asked to do my welcome speech. I will tell you that it's a minor story, but it has got its major impact. And my professor, I remember this because he died a few days back, 3 or 4 days back. My professor, my HOD, they were all there, almost 23 teachers were there in the facing us, and all the students were there. My duty was to give the welcome to the junior batches. And I said so many things except the crucial word welcome. So only because of nervousness, only because of sheer nervousness. I was just only 18 or 19, but my teacher, the HOD, then made it a point to conduct a program for the students, keeping me in my mind, by which after 1 or 2 semesters, I went to him and I said that, sir, you are absolutely brilliant in diagnosing my or understanding my difficulty, and from there onwards I could change a lot. So maybe I'm not still a great speaker, but at least I know how to overcome what we call as nervousness. So Samarpita, you are brilliant. I'm sure of that. You have nothing like nervousness. I'm sure of that. And ISPEL is the right forum to make you an effective speaker.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva, and of course my friend Dr. Kansham, Dr. Praveen Joshi, and of course my friend Samarpita. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Your thoughts are invaluable. It is an honor for all of us to be able to take such treasury of knowledge with us from here today. I must say my nervousness just boomeranged at me as my excitement after what you said. It is such an overwhelming experience. Now, I would like to request Sir Pramod M. Thengle to distribute the certificates, digitally. Sir, are you there?
Yeah, indeed, it's a pleasure listening to Dr. Praveen Joshi for nearly 75 minutes. Indeed, he has not only touched upon various issues related to the right choice of words and the right words to be used, but what he has said is absolutely right. We have the choice, we have the chance for the choice of words. At the same time, we all have the right to use the right word. That's very important. We all have the right to use the right word. And long back, Aristotle has said about anger. And I'm going to replace the anger in the form of the right word. What he said is, anybody can use the words. That's very easy. But to use the right word with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in a right way is not that easy. So that's why we need to have the practice, and practice makes a man not perfect, but efficient enough. So we all need to practice all the time. Whatever may be the forum, whosoever may be the audience, the practice must go on. And for doing all this honor and making us aware of various facts related to the right word at the right moment with the right students on the right perspective, this certificate goes to Dr. Praveen Joshi for enlightening us and also bringing so many things on to the platform of ISPEL and making our Sunday a really enjoyable one. Sir, please accept it. Joshi sir, please accept it.
Thank you. Thank you.
This certificate goes to, thank you, sir. This certificate goes to Dr. Murali Krishnan, who is always shares his experience and also shares some of his thoughts related to all the topics which we have been discussing on Sunday Sahityik Satsang. So this certificate goes to Dr. Murali Krishnan for doing the honors as the chairperson of today's event. Sir, this is for you.
Sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And this goes to the nervous lady, Samarpita Day. And you may not
Thank you,
be
sir.
thinking of that you are nervous. Don't be nervous, because as Murali Krishnan sir has said, this is the particular platform for each one of us to come and showcase our talent, showcase whatever we have. And unless we get the platform, we are unable to learn. And that's why this platform of iSpell is for all the people, those who have joined iSpell, to come and perform, because we do feel abilities are there. Only one thing is required is the right approach and the platform, and which iSpell provides. So Samarpita, this certificate goes to you. Thank you very much. We really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. And this certificate goes to Dr. Ashok Sachdeva, who has coordinated the entire event in the month of May. In the bleak situation, he has brought vibrant colors to iSpell by organizing all these events throughout the month. So this certificate goes to Professor Ashok Sachdeva. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Me too. I'm surprised to receive this certificate. Okay, thank you so much.
iSpell, sir.
Yeah.
After I there is S. S for
Yes.
surprise.
Yes, sir. Great.